everybody. Well, thank you guys for all showing up. Joseph Miranda, broker and owner of Miranda Executive Realty. Today, we have a special treat for you guys. We have BJ Posadas here from Title Now. We've worked with Miranda Executive Realty, or myself has worked with Title Now for, I don't know how long. I'd say we probably met them back in about 2017. Somewhere around there. So we've been working with Title Now for a very, very long time. One thing to know about myself is if we work with a vendor and we have a bad experience with the vendor, we will immediately stop using them. If they don't do what they need to do to make that experience right, we will immediately stop using them. So the fact that we've been working with Title Now for this amount of time says a lot about the company. It says a lot about the organization and the leadership. BJ's been with Title Now going on 3 years now. We've had a really productive and a great relationship with BJ from Title Now. He started, actually since he's come in, our relationship has gotten even stronger. So today BJ is going to be talking about title, and it's really important that us as real estate agents, I see myself as the ringmaster in real estate. Right. So ourselves as real estate agents, we need to know a little bit about everything because we need to be coordinating sometimes multiple things at the same time. Right. So in order for us to properly or effectively coordinate these things, we need to really know a little bit about a whole lot. And the more that we know about all of these different subjects, the more valuable and the more value we're going to have to offer our customers. So today, BJ is going to be talking about the title side of real estate, the title side of a transaction. Basically, when you send a file to Title Now, what do they do with that file? What are some of these terms that that we hear a lot? He's going to be explaining these at the end. If you have any questions, please save your questions for the end. We're going to do a Q&A at the end. So write them down. BJ will be happy to answer them. He's super well versed in these. Next slide, please. So yeah, a little bit about BJ. He's been in the real estate industry for over 9 years. He's been a real estate agent himself, dealt with his own transactions, but he's also, he's an advocate, or he's with, Title Now as kind of that on the front lines to assist us, in our transactions. So it's been with them, I think going on 3 years now, and I can definitely say that, that last line. He is deeply committed to providing exceptional service to his clients, to his customers, to his agent partners. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to BJ.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Joe. And first things first, I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Well, thanks again. I do appreciate all of your time today. I know that you guys could be doing plenty of other things, but you decided to log on for an hour. And I want to make sure, in respect to that I make the hour as valuable as possible. And like Joe mentioned, I've been working with Title Now for quite some time now. We pride ourselves in being more than just a title company, but really a resource and an essential part of the real estate agents team. And like Joe mentioned, my background is in real estate. I've been a licensed real estate agent for over 8 years now. And I believe that it allows me to do my job that much better because I've actually been in the agent's shoes. So a lot of the pain points or a lot of the common challenges that you may face as an agent as you go about your day-to-day and servicing your clients, I've been there before. And, I'm here to help you with a solution-oriented approach. And most importantly, a customer service approach that's going to make you always look like a rock star in front of your client. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that it would be impossible to literally memorize everything that a title company does, or what all of the steps are and what the order of operations is, behind our doors, and what the processors are taking care of for your files. But the most important thing to have or to know is that you have somebody that you can count on and that you can leverage when it comes to attorney oversight and to support from a title company. This way, you don't have to be the one that necessarily has all of the answers. So I would like everyone here to know that from here moving forward, if your clients or you yourself or another agent or anybody is inquiring about anything that we go over today, or anything in regards to the title process in real estate, please know that I'm just a phone call, an email, or a text message away. And you can always tell your clients with confidence that, maybe I don't have this answer right now, but that's exactly why I've partnered with a title professional that can accurately give you the response in a timely manner. Let me see if I can connect with BJ now. And then that typically is just enough for me to open a avenue of communication to you and your clients and get you any answers that you need in regard to real estate legal concerns, and especially the title process in real estate. So what I want to explain today is basically what happens, or what a title company, the role that we play the moment that you have an executed contract. So you as agents, depending on what county that you're working in, whether it's Broward County or Dade County, where it's more customary that the buyer chooses the title company that they're going to work with, or whether you're working in outside counties such as Palm Beach, or maybe you're working up in Boca, where it's more common for the seller to choose the title company. Either way, it's typically the real estate agent who is driving the bus in this regard and guiding their clients on which title company that they use. And that's because the client is usually only buying a house one or two times in their entire life, whereas you as agents are working on transactions all of the time and multiple times. So they're going to lean on you for a title company. And if most of you are familiar with the purchase and sale agreement, there's a section on that first page that clearly defines who the escrow and or title company would be. Later on in the purchase and sale agreement, there's a section where you would choose or define whether the seller or the buyer is paying for title. And you as agents, since you're the ones that are filling out that purchase and sale agreement, that's basically your opportunity to plug us at Title Now and our team in to be the title company that's going to organize and facilitate the closing of your transaction, and also to be the resource for your clients. So when you have an executed agreement for the purchase or sale of a property, and you've defined and selected the title company, you would send that to our office. And I'll provide these instructions for you after this presentation, but you would send that contract to our office. And at that point, you would get a correspondence confirming receipt from our office, and it would assign your file to a processor here. So when that happens, just know that you have a point of contact in myself, and you also have a point of contact in the processor that is assigned to your file. So I want to go over quickly what a title company is and why you need a title company and why you would send us a file. So in case, for those of you that aren't totally familiar, a title company is essentially a collective agent that's bringing all of the parties that are involved in a real estate transaction together. So oftentimes, it might be the first time that you're working with your buyer or seller. It might be the first time that the buyer or seller and yourself are working with a particular lender. It might be the first time that that all parties are working with the title company for the first time. And, all of the other parties involved, such as, appraisers, home inspectors, and such, there needs to be somebody that's bringing that all together, that's organizing the paperwork and ultimately facilitating the closing of your transaction. And that's the role of what a title company serves. So we specialize in ensuring that the title to a property is legitimate, free from any defects, and provides peace of mind for all of the parties involved. It would be ill-advised to try and close a transaction without the help of a title company for these exact reasons. So how do we do this? Well, the way we do this is, as I mentioned, when we receive your purchase and sale agreement in our office and it's assigned to a dedicated processor, that processor is going to go through a set of steps that they must basically complete to get to the point where clear and marketable title can be transferred or can be conveyed, right? And along the way, going through those steps, there may be items that do come up that require resolution or a solution for the transaction to continue to closing. And every transaction is different. And sometimes it's a very smooth process. And other times there can be what's called a cloud on title, which could possibly be any of those defects that I just described, or things like violations, liens, encumbrances, all of these types of things that can come up. Sometimes you run across properties where you'll have somebody selling a property. Meanwhile, there's somebody on the fence that's claiming that they're the rightful owner. You may have people that pass away, and then there's a dispute over which of the heirs is actually completely entitled to be the appointed representative of the estate. Random things like that will always be different on every transaction, but it's the title company's job to take your file, go through the steps of examination, and then work together with all parties involved to move past any challenges that come up by providing solutions. So I want to talk about the steps of providing clear and marketable title, and that should be on the next slide. Yes. Okay, awesome. So the first thing that a title company is going to do is, and by the way, I just want to, before I go through it all, because it's a lot of information, don't always remember that you don't have to memorize all of this or know all of this, but you definitely want to have a trusted title partner as part of your strategic partners so that you can always defer to someone like myself, one of the attorneys in our office, or the dedicated processor for your file to answer any questions about any of the steps that I'm about to go over. So steps to providing clear and marketable title. First thing we're going to do is conduct a title search. It's very straightforward. It's a thorough examination of public records and a trace of ownership history that identifies any issues that may arise. So oftentimes this is very, very straightforward, but other times, like I mentioned, you may find that the public records are showing that somebody is claiming ownership on the property, and then there would be measures that the title processor has to take to find out who the actual owner of a property is. Next step would be a title examination. And that's where we're going to review the search results and identify any liens, encumbrances, violations, or defects on a property. So sometimes you may be dealing with a seller that says, oh, I installed that kitchen and I did everything by the book and you have nothing to worry about. Great. Take that with a grain of salt. But after further examination by the title company, it may result that things weren't done correctly and there are pending liens or violations against the property that, again, would have to be resolved in most cases by the seller before we can do what's called clearing title. Another step is ordering a survey. So when we order a survey, this is obtaining a property survey. This verifies the boundaries, the easements, and encroachments that are within the confines of the property lines. So you always want to order a survey so that the seller, and more importantly, the new buyer of a home, knows exactly where their property line starts and where it ends. You want to know exactly how far back the easement may be if you wanted to build any additional square footage from the property boundaries, things like that. Or maybe come the change of ownership, when we order a survey, it's found out that the neighbor has their fence built on your property lines, and that may be a challenge that has to be resolved. But things like that, and for that reason, we're always ordering a survey. One of the next steps that we take is ordering an Estoppel certificate. So not all properties.
I have a question about the
Yes.
survey. So in what cases you do not order a survey?
Well, if a buyer's purchasing a property with cash, they have the right to, in most cases, waive a lot of these steps if they so choose. We would not advise that. But if the buyer in that case didn't need a survey or didn't want a survey, then they could elect to not have one, and it would be a charge that was removed from the final settlement statement.
Mhm.
In most cases, buyers, number one, want to do right by their purchase and not leave any stones unturned. So they'll keep a survey included. And also in most cases, when a buyer is using a loan to purchase a property, the lender is going to require that none of these steps be overlooked, because they're also requiring a title insurance policy, and the underwriters that issue that title insurance policy are also going to require that a survey and all of these other steps that I'm going over be completed. So the short answer is, if you had a cash buyer and it was a very straightforward purchase and they wanted to bypass that because they felt confident that they already knew everything about the property, then in that case, maybe we wouldn't order one.
And so sometimes I know that lenders reach out to title and seek advice from title asking whether to confirm whether an existing survey is available. So does that automatically mean whatever the previous survey states goes along with the property, basically transfers over to the new owner? And that is the reason that you would omit ordering a new survey? Or what's the situation with current owners, the sellers, having done the survey in the past?
That's a good point. If a survey was recently done and recorded, oftentimes that can suffice. And like you mentioned, would be a reason why a survey wouldn't need to be ordered. But depending on the parties involved, a survey is only good for a certain amount of time. So if that survey was recorded and ordered, years back, and let's say the lender involved has like a 24-month minimum for a survey to be provided by the existing seller to be useful, then that may affect it. So it depends on how long ago the survey was ordered that is currently available. If it was, just within 12 months prior, then it may very well be a survey that can be used, and a step in this order of operations that could be bypassed. But again, a lot of what's done with title is a case-by-case basis because every property is so different.
Thank you.
Let me know if that answered your question. And if you wanted any more specific information on surveys, what I would always suggest is, we have a side one-on-one call, and we can even have one of our head processors in on that call to answer like all of the specific questions on when or why or what the bylaws and guidelines are for surveys. But the important thing to know is that it's an important step in the title search process, and that in most cases it's advised to always order a survey so you know exactly what is being transferred and what the new buyer is purchasing in what their property actually is and where it lies, and where their property lines actually are. So the next step would be ordering an Estoppel. And as a lot of you know, a lot of these houses that you sell are governed by a body known as a homeowners association or a condo association, and these governing bodies collect fees, maintenance fees and management fees on a monthly basis. Those governing bodies also typically have ongoing projects that they are conducting to maintain the property and the landscaping and the signage and the common areas and amenities of a particular community or building and such. And it's no secret that not every homeowner is either paying their monthly fees on time, or maybe they are, but they didn't pay part of an assessment for a project that was taking place. This is a very good example of why an Estoppel is important, because what an Estoppel does is it confirms outstanding balances and obligations associated with the property. So if let's say, for example, a seller hadn't paid their maintenance fee in over a year, before that seller could effectively transfer ownership and sell that property, they're going to have to pay that balance. And when would they pay that balance? In most cases, if it wasn't paid prior, it would show up on an Estoppel certificate, which again is confirming all outstanding balances. And then those balances would be addressed by taking funds from the proceeds of the sale to pay the parties that were due those outstanding amounts. So, depending on how long a property owner has owned the property and how good of an owner they've been, by the time they're ready to sell or transfer ownership, there's going to be a number of different checks and balances. And that's again what a title company's job is, to put all of those figures on a settlement statement, so that at the end there's an amount due to the seller, an amount due from the buyer, and once those funds are transferred, all of the pertinent parties that were ever due any funds or fees in association with the subject property will be paid accordingly. If not, then they're not going to be able to transfer clear and marketable title, and that seller or buyer wouldn't be able to effectively conduct the transaction. So this can also be a reason where a dispute might come up, where somebody's saying that, yeah, on the Estoppel certificate, this item came up and it's saying that I owe this much money, but I know that I already paid this. And again, it would be the processor's job of the title company to further investigate, check with all the parties involved, and come to a solution so that ultimately we're figuring out who's due what at closing, and that would be conveyed accurately on the final settlement statement. So the next step would be a title insurance policy. So a title insurance policy is really one of the major items that a title company facilitates. And it's different from, your car insurance or homeowners insurance, where you're protecting yourself against future events. In the case of real estate title, a real estate title insurance policy is protecting the homeowner from previous events. So after going through all of the necessary steps that an underwriter needs to know that a title company went through examining a property's title, they will then go and issue a title insurance policy that is basically protecting the new homeowner against anything that may come up after the fact. So if 6 months later, for some crazy reason, someone says that they have a deed that has their signature on it and they are the actual rightful owner of this home, that title insurance policy and that title company, having gone through all of these steps, basically that policy would protect the owner from anything that does come up like I just described, because the underwriter already knows that the title company went through all of these steps to provide clear and marketable title. And at that point, the owner wouldn't be on the hook for resolving that issue, but rather the carrier and the title company. So especially if you're buying a property and obtaining a bank loan, that lender is going to require a title insurance policy, because they also don't want to be responsible for anything that may come up after the fact. And neither do the parties involved purchasing and selling, and especially the homeowner. And that's one of these steps of conveying clear and marketable title. And one thing is to provide clear title, which means that there's no existing, defects or clouds on title like we just described. But the marketable title would include a title insurance policy, because then the next homeowner that comes down the line that might buy that property is more inclined to want to, because they know that there was a previous title policy issued. And if anything were to come up after the fact, they're protected by the title policy that's in place. So the next step is resolving any issues that came up during the previous 5 steps that I just described. So a title search, title examination, survey, estoppel, all of these are trying to uncover any clouds on title. And if there were any clouds on title, then resolving those would be a essential part of organizing what comes next, which would be closing. And of course, the closing is the best part of the process, because it means that all of the steps have taken place, all of the solutions have been provided for any challenges that took place, and ultimately you can facilitate the transfer of title, ensuring all necessary documents are properly executed and recorded. So that moment where you're sitting with your client at the closing table and there's a stack of documents that the buyer and seller need to sign, basically means that all of these steps have been taken care of. And now it's a title company's job to obtain your signatures, facilitate your closing, mail out any documents, get wet signatures on anything that requires a wet signature. Maybe the buyer or seller is a foreign national, and that may require extra measures. Maybe buyer and seller are, both living in different states. Maybe buyer and seller can't make it to the title company on Friday, but they're available on Saturday, and we need to send a mobile notary or some type of additional measure to make sure that this closing can happen. Again, it becomes the job of the processor at the title company assigned to your file, and of course the title company, to bring all of this together. If you're using a lender, if your buyer's using a lender to purchase property, the lender's numbers and the title company's numbers would have to balance, and there'd be a back and forth of making sure that closing disclosures on both ends match. That's all part of facilitating your closing. And like I mentioned, you don't necessarily have to be an expert on any of these, thoroughly of any of these process, but just know that these are the general steps that are taking place. That it starts with the title search and examination, that you go through checks and balances with Estoppel. You make sure you're checking off all the boxes so that effectively a title insurance policy can be issued. And in the end, all of the correct information, documents, and numbers are being exchanged so that everyone's on the same page, and buyer and seller sign their closing documents confirming exactly that. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So as I was mentioning, clear and marketable title is basically what you would want and what you would advise your clients to seek out whenever purchasing a property. For pretty much for normal conventional buyers, they are only interested in clear and marketable title. Now, you may find a case where there are people that have experience in curing title defects, and they may be purchasing a property for something other than just living in it, and starting a family and kind of being your normal buyer. Maybe there's an investor that, fix and flips properties, or that buys and holds and has other strategies in place that they're going to take advantage of owning this real estate. And they may be okay with purchasing a property that has defects because they have experience, let's say, resolving these defects with the city or with a different municipality that has some type of lien or violation against the property. That may be a reason why somebody would purchase a property without clear and marketable title. And, in that case, it would be at their own discretion, and they would have to sign off for anything that they're purchasing against what is considered clear and marketable title. But just know that clear title is always going to ensure full ownership rights, and it enhances the marketability of the property for resale after. And having a title policy in place and no defects makes the title and property that much more marketable. And that's going to streamline the closing process, and it's going to reduce the risk of any disputes after the fact. All right, so let's talk about determining credits and debts. Credits and debts are calculated based on negotiating terms, like we mentioned, Estoppel certificates, and prorations. So when we say negotiating terms, oftentimes you guys as agents are doing your part to make sure all of the parties involved are happy, and this may involve negotiating terms beyond what is just a straightforward purchase price or sales price. An example is you go under contract, the title company is doing their, going through their process for clearing title, and in the meantime, you have an inspection period that you're assisting your buyer, let's say, conduct their own due diligence. This due diligence oftentimes within an inspection period includes things like a home inspection. And as we know, when you're dealing with properties, most cases that aren't brand new construction, that home inspection is going to reveal certain items. And those items may become a point of negotiation so that buyer and seller can come to agreement and proceed. So if an example of terms could be, an electrical panel that was discovered in the home inspection to not be up to code, that's going to have a cost associated with replacing. And a buyer may not be comfortable with that and say, I'm going to need a credit, of $1,000, let's say, to replace the electrical panel. It's a very common item that comes up under inspection. So someone has to take, and if an addendum is signed and buyer and seller come to agreement about changing terms, all of those items need to be sent to the title company, to the processor, so that, again, it's being defined and accurately conveyed on a settlement statement. So that $1,000 to address updating the electrical panel, or maybe, those concessions at closing to help the buyer buy down their lending rate, anything that's any credits or concessions from a seller or buyer, all of that needs to be put onto the settlement statement, and all parties need to agree. And that's why it's important to accurately determine, the credits and debits that are needed on a settlement statement. And that comes from either terms that are negotiated by the agent and their clients involved. Obviously, like I mentioned, an estoppel certificate might show that one of the parties owes money to, a governing body or an association. And then lastly, there are taxes that need to be paid upon selling or buying a property. And there's also a cost to adding stamps and certificates on a deed. Depending on what time of the year this took place, may result in that a buyer or seller does not owe the entire year of taxes, but rather a prorated amount. So it is the job of the title company to examine what those different amounts would be for doc stamps and for transferring and for taxes. So the title company would need to calculate based on when the closing is taking place and how much then either buyer or seller is due to pay for the forthcoming year, for example. And that's going to be a prorated amount. And that also would end up as a check and balance on the settlement statement, either due from buyer or due to seller or vice versa. And it's very, very important because, again, you really only have one opportunity to do this. Good luck after the fact, if the parties involved didn't do their job, or if a title company didn't do their job properly, trying to go after and collect funds from from an owner that is no longer the legal owner of a property is going to be a very, very hard process to try and collect due funds from any of the parties involved in the closing of a transaction. So it's very, very important that all of this is done, that no steps are skipped. And like we said, you only get one opportunity to do this, and that's why getting clear and marketable title is so important. All right, so I went over the role of estoppel certificate, so maybe we can skip that. But again, it's just making sure that there are no outstanding balances due to the property. As we mentioned, could it be association, management fees, assessments? This is also very, very much more important in places like condo buildings where there's almost always an existing project going on that homeowners are paying for. And it may very well be that during the transfer of title, you're in the middle of a project. And it can be a point of negotiation or contention of how much a buyer or seller wants to pay for that existing balance. And that's the type of stuff that would be conveyed on an estoppel certificate. So it allows for transparency, so that a buyer knows what they're walking into, and a seller is, the seller will be able to communicate what they've been, addressing or what they've been taking care of thus far with the property. But it's a very important step. And again, if there's any governing bodies involved, you don't want to skip the estoppel certificate verification. Surveys, we went over surveys. I want to jump to slide number 8, where we'll review the final settlement statement. Okay, so here's a screenshot of a settlement statement. And again, I want to make sure that all of you know what a settlement statement is. Now, memorizing it or understanding every single line item, I would say that, if you can make yourself better versed and familiar with this document, it's going to be very, very helpful. And if anybody wanted to set up a one-on-one with myself or with one of the processors here to go over a settlement statement and fully review it, be happy to do that for you. But in general, just know that it looks like this. There's one side dedicated to the seller and one side dedicated to the buyer. And after going through all of these steps, there's going to be a balances due from the buyer or due from the seller or due to seller or due to buyer. And that's all going to be defined at the bottom of the page. So essentially, a settlement statement is basically a balance sheet. And it's one of the most important documents, and one of the most important documents that everybody involved has to be on the same page about. So oftentimes you'll find that a pre-settlement statement is being exchanged, conveying essentially closing costs for the parties involved. And you'll find that this is oftentimes being exchanged from the lender, sent back to the title company is sent to the seller sent to the buyer, and everyone's making sure that, you know, that addendum you signed for that seller credit to the buyer, or that unpaid landscaping fee, or in your case, also very important, your real estate commissions that are due to you as the buyer or selling agent for the transaction. All of that is conveyed on a settlement statement, and all parties should be reviewing this. And I should point out that the realtor doesn't have to sign off on a settlement statement, but as a realtor, you always want to be reviewing with your client and for your own, you know, for yourself, the settlement statement before the closing takes place. Because at closing, buyer and seller needs to sign this statement, and a realtor by law isn't necessarily required to, but you guys need to make sure that, you know, you're collecting the right processing fee for your brokerage. You also want to make sure that if you contributed, let's say, part of your commission to get something done in the transaction, that's accurately projected on there so that your client knows that your contribution was included. Your real estate commission, now more than ever, especially with the NAR settlement and any forthcoming changes that may happen, you're going to want to make sure that the commission that you negotiated for yourself or that you agreed with your buyer to get paid is on that settlement statement. Because again, there's only one closing, and anything that's not on that settlement statement, it's going to be a very, very difficult process to go and try and collect funds to any due parties, including yourself as agents. So when we're reviewing the settlement statement, and again, when I say review, that's oftentimes a processor sending to a lending office sending to the borrower sending back to the title company, and revisions are being made until everyone's on the same page. But what you're doing there is we're verifying the accuracy. We're examining all of the costs involved with closing, comparing the title company's numbers to the loan origination fees and loan estimate numbers, understanding and prorations, and answering any questions to the parties involved on how the numbers were calculated. If there's any discrepancies, like I mentioned, you know, reviewing, let's say you're an agent and you were due 2.5% commission, and you're looking at the settlement statement and you're seeing only 2%. That would be a discrepancy that you would bring up with the processor or with the parties involved to make sure that changes are made so that the numbers are then accurate. And then lastly, once the settlement statement and all parties are on the same page, you can then sign with confidence and know that, you know, once you're signing a settlement statement, it likely means that you're well on your way to closing this transaction, and for everybody to have that opportunity where they can of course celebrate. So by carefully reviewing the final settlement statement before closing, buyers and sellers can ensure that the transaction proceeds smoothly and that all parties are in agreement regarding the terms and costs of the sale. So from contract to closing, that's basically, you know, a short format summarized description of all of the steps involved. Again, it would be very, very difficult to memorize those steps or know, you know, exactly what every step entails from a processing standpoint. But it's very, very important that you're familiar at least with the terms that we use today to describe that process from contract to closing. And again, please know that you have a dependable title resource, an attorney-owned and operated title company, and a dedicated and committed title rep in myself that you can contact and lean on to further convey or communicate any of this information to you yourself or your clients, or to answer any questions and concerns that you yourself or your clients may come across as you go about your day-to-day business activities, working as a real estate agent. And, you know, we're never gonna be the best lending expert is a lender. The best real estate agent expert is a real estate agent. And I always say the best title expert is a title rep or a title company, but we all need to work together now more than ever, especially with the changes that are taking place in our industry, to be able to provide the best and exceptional service for our clients and to be able to also demonstrate our value as agents and the team and support that you bring behind you. Because, you know, the more information that's out there with consumers, the more difficult it's getting now to secure commissions. And, you know, we know that it's going to be the agents that have power teams and that know how to accurately articulate their value that are going to thrive. And, you know, this is why Title Now, we've kind of prided ourselves in being that resource for the agents so that, you know, we can help you as things are ever changing and evolving in our industry. Again, we want to be part of your team, and we want to be that resource that you can lean on if anything comes up in regards to title. So the next thing I want to go over is the benefits of working with Title Now, and of course myself as your title rep. Title companies, you know, there's a lot of them out there. And of course, I'm sure that a lot of you have encountered many different options when it comes to title companies. You know, Title Now is definitely not the first, and we won't be the last. You know, we're one of probably like 50 title companies that I can think of just in the, you know, downtown Fort Lauderdale area. And every title company, if operating properly, can effectively or should be able to effectively execute exactly what I just described in the previous slides, from contract to closing. That's a very transactional process and repetitive process. And the title company, finding a title company that does that is not the hardest thing in the world. But we know that as a title company, we need to earn your business because you do have options. And to earn your business, we believe that we need to go above and beyond just the contract to closing process, just the ability to provide clear and marketable title, just facilitating and organizing your closings and recording documents. That is the standard. What I just described is what you can find with any title companies. And what I want to go over now is some of the things that we're doing to really earn your business. And again, as a commitment to be part of your team. So number one, I want you guys to know that you have personalized support through myself, BJ Posadas, in that there's a dedicated processor here to examine your files, and you can always contact them. But outside of that, if you needed someone to speak to in regards to title after business hours or on the weekends, or, you know, maybe it's later at night and, you know, you want to text somebody, I try to be always available. And if I'm not always available, I'm getting immediately back to you. But please know that you have someone that you can depend on for communicating. And also, if your clients need further assurance, someone that your clients can depend on for that over communication. I am not the person here that works on your files. So you may have, you know, 2 or 3 files for closings that are on the way here at our office. I am a director of business development here, and it's my job to create and provide creative resources for you all as agents outside of the processing department. So I'm the person that would gladly help you organizing your marketing campaigns. Maybe there's a open house on the weekend that you'd like refreshments and snacks brought to. You'd like perhaps somebody to set up a tripod so that you can have some content of yourself opening doors for the clients and giving tours of the home. You know, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to creatively support the agents by providing them resources. So let me just go over what some of those resources are. But one of the major ones that's really been working well this year is where I'm actually sitting right now, which is a podcast studio that we have in our downtown Fort Lauderdale office. I think all of you know, as agents that need more exposure to get more clients, it's more important now than ever to have a presence on social media. And our podcast studio is a resource that all of you as agents have to use at your disposal to create content that's either educational, kind of like what we're doing today, or maybe it's specifically for social media and just to gain you more exposure. A lot of agents like to come here and film their state of the market or their weekly newsletter video. This studio and the equipment here, I would like all of you to think of it as your own. All you'd have to do is just give me a buzz, let me know maybe when you want to come in, and be happy to make the space available for you. And if you wanted to collaborate on creating some content together, or if you just wanted to me to close the door and you kind of come in here and do your own thing, or perhaps you brought in a guest, another agent to speak to, another congruent vendor in our industry, like a lender or a home inspector that you wanted to have a high level conversation with, the podcast studio works really, really good for that. And it's a resource that's free for you all to use. And it's one of the things that Title Now has kind of created as something extra, again, because we want to earn your business and we want you to know that we're committed as to being part of your team. Client appreciation events is something that a lot of agents like to take advantage of. And if you've never hosted an event before, have no fear. We host events all the time, and we've have awesome relationships with a lot of the venue owners around town. We have relationships with other vendors that would perhaps maybe want to sponsor and help put together your event, creating digital marketing flyers, setting up an Eventbrite page where people can RSVP, all things like that. Obviously, sponsorship for refreshments and light bites. At Title Now, I'm lucky enough to have a expanded marketing budget that I can extend to you all as agents. So if you have any ideas for things you wanted to do, maybe I had an agent that put a picnic together for all of the dog owners at the local community park within a gated community that she had a couple listings in, and she was trying to get more listings in that neighborhood in Davie. So she asked me, "Hey, BJ, I'm gonna do a dog gathering for the homeowners here. Can you help me in putting this client appreciation event together? And do you have any ideas?" And then I came up with an idea, because I had seen somebody else do it, of hiring a photographer to take doggy headshots. So people love their dogs. And, that was an example where, Title Now and myself, we paid for the cost of the photographer. The agent, basically took the responsibility of inviting all the homeowners, because she was already mailing all of them anyways. And then, collectively, we came up with the idea of doing doggy headshots. So imagine a bunch of people from the neighborhood showed up with their dogs. They left with cool, high quality pictures of their dog, like catching a tennis ball or something. And for the agent, it ended up being great exposure for her. And she has continued to dominate that neighborhood. And every other month, I'm getting a phone call from her about a new listing that she got, and the great feedback she got from the doggy headshot picnic that we put together. And that's just another great example of how title company and agent were able to bounce around ideas, work together, collaborate outside of work hours, because it was on a weekend. But I was there to support her, both with my presence, with organizing the event, bouncing around the ideas, and of course extending a bit of a budget so that she didn't have to, so it wouldn't be a costly, event for her, but a very beneficial and valuable gathering. So things like that. Please know that I'm here to support all of you with any creative ideas that you may have. And there's no limit to what maybe we can put together, especially when there's more heads than one, kind of just thinking of new ideas to put in place to generate more business and for you guys to get in front of more prospective clients. We do have two full-time attorneys. So I don't want anyone to think that there's not an active real estate agent in our office. So if your client or you yourself ever needed attorney oversight, you have a file in our office, and maybe you're negotiating terms and you want to know exactly what verbiage to add to your addendums to protect and not put your client in a vulnerable position, our attorneys can provide that legal oversight for you. On the seller side, if you needed seller side doc preparation or buyer side doc preparation, the attorneys here can happily do that for you as well. As you all know, it's ill-advised to always work with the other side's team only. You want to have somebody that's working on your behalf in your best interest, and the attorneys here can assist with that. So any legal oversight or real estate legal questions that maybe you had or that were a concern and you wanted directly addressed, I'm just a phone call away. I'm happy to organize a conference call or email thread or a direct phone call with one of our licensed real estate attorneys. We have transaction coordinators here. I don't know how much that applies to the Miranda team, because I know you guys have a super rock star transaction coordinator already. But in case a team didn't have a transaction coordinator that supported them, we do have transaction coordinators in addition to our processors that are an added benefit of working with Title Now. One of the big things that's really been a big hit lately is the use of mobile notaries. So it's after COVID, it wasn't as popular for everyone to be in a conference room all together, you know, because things got a little bit different during the COVID times. We were doing a lot of remote closings and closings where all parties involved were in different locations. So we started implementing mobile notaries, and that actually just started to become more of an added benefit. So I'm happy and to extend a mobile notary for use for your closing at no additional charge. So usually, it may translate to like $150, $250 additional line item on that settlement statement that buyer or seller would be due. But I did want to let everybody on the Miranda team know that I'm happy to waive that fee for all of you. And a great example of how somebody could use a mobile notary is you may be selling or buying, or your clients may be selling or buying a home that isn't necessarily immediately located close to our, let's say our Fort Lauderdale office, right? So buyer and seller are moving, they may have a moving truck scheduled to come in at this time and whatnot. It may actually be not convenient for the buyer and seller to come to the title company. It may actually be a huge convenience if the mobile notary could go to them and they could sign their documents in the house that they just bought, which some agents are doing that. You can sign documents, get keys, and boom, you're in the house and you take pictures and videos and celebrate. Or maybe you're just, leaving town and it's just inconvenient for you to come to the title company, or maybe you can't sign on a weekday and the only time you have free is on a weekend, right? Use the mobile notary as a tool to make the closing process that much more enjoyable and convenient for your clients. And Title Now and myself are happy to extend the use of mobile notaries for all of you as agents on a case-by-case basis, depending on what's needed. But it's become a very, very valuable benefit especially for clients that aren't necessarily available during working hours, and maybe they can only sign like later in the evening or when during the weekend, stuff like that. It's a very useful tool. Social media strategy sessions. I don't know if I'm assuming everybody's on Instagram, but if not, or if we're not friends, my name there is BJ_Title Now FL. And if you go on my Instagram, it's a good example of the type of social media content that myself and a lot of the agents are collaboratively producing and putting out there. And if that piques your interest at all, I would be happy to sit down with you and have a one-on-one session, and we can strategize on how we can make your social media look just like that. I can tell you about the tools that we're using to create those type of short form, high quality content videos. I can bounce around ideas. I could send to you, spreadsheet after spreadsheet of structured video scripts that includes things like a hook, details, and call to action. If you've ever been on social media and you see somebody saying, DM me the word X and I'll send you my free guide, my free home buying guide, or DM me the word something, and automatically you're getting a file or a Calendly link or something like that. I can show you how to set up those automations. But there's a lot of pretty cool resources that I've learned myself in enhancing my own social media. And I want agents to know that you can always lean on me and I can teach you whatever's been working for me and what tools we've been using to really, really make solid content, because it's important now more than ever. So again, my Instagram handle is BJ_Title Now FL. And definitely love to connect with you guys on that front, because it's something I also enjoy. And then I also mentioned we do have the podcast studio. You can come in here in person and do it. We got different backgrounds, different lighting, different cameras, different setups, and it's really been a great resource. So aside from the contract to closing process, all of these additional resources are available to you. Any of your marketing materials, if you needed somewhere to print them out, or if you didn't want to pay the cost of printing out your flyers or your postcards and stuff like that, connect with me. We have high quality printers here at the office. You can come in and print your materials. You can come in and use our Wi-Fi. You can come in and use our conference rooms for buyers consultations or for team meetings or for your recruitment efforts for any of you guys that want to add agents to your groups. Think of our offices as your own. We do the entire state of Florida. While we have offices in Broward, Dade, Palm Beach, obviously there's parts of the state that we don't have offices in. And again, that's another example of where we would leverage mobile notaries. But I want all of you to think of myself and Title Now as a essential part of your business, support for yourself as an agent, and somebody that you can lean on for any creative ideas that you want to come up with to work on together. Like that example I gave about the picnic for dogs that worked so well for that agent. It wasn't like we had that in my list of resources prior to us having the one-on-one, but it was just an example of how the agent can work with a rep like myself, and we can come up with great ideas, and you're not alone in it. And even if that means, us as a title company paying for some of your efforts, for lack of a better way to describe it, sometimes it's just that kind of support that, the agents look for. And I'm here for it and happy to connect with all of you to go over anything that we went over in today's presentation, and of course to talk about how we can work together for anything that wasn't described today. And then the last thing I'd like to go over as we kind of wrap up here is I'm wondering if anybody has any questions that I didn't go over today or wanted to know more about anything that I talked about, but please do let me know.
I think you did such a great job explaining everything, BJ, and you left everybody speechless.
I did. We have a question. I did. So you provide the mobile notaries. Is that just in Broward?
No, that's for the entire state.
The entire state. Florida. Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, if we don't have an office located where you may need to organize a closing, we can always use a mobile notary, or we have different affiliations with co-working spaces. A lot of you might know like Regis that has offices all over the state. And if you needed to host a meeting or meet with a client or conduct a closing, we can also rent out or book out those office spaces and conference rooms. Most of this is no additional charge to the agent or client. And yeah, mobile notaries are included. And we often do that. We'll book out a conference room for a closing at a co-working space, send a mobile notary, and make sure that the client, can have their closing and is well taken care of, even if it's not where we have a local presence.
That's awesome. That's awesome. BJ, I appreciate your time, man. That was super educational. I think everybody got a lot of information out of that. This is recorded, everybody. So, if some of this seemed confusing or wasn't clear, I would encourage go back, watch this video again. We've got some newer agents on here, or some agents that, just do a couple of deals a year. So if that's you, I would encourage, when you do have a transaction, go back through this video so that you're going to understand the title process a lot better. The other thing that I encourage, no matter where you're at in your business, whether brand new or been selling for a decade or longer, reach out to BJ, make that relationship with him. Everything he said is absolutely true. They offer just immense, incredible amount of support to all real estate agents. They're always happy to be there. I've never had a problem. I've never had any pushback from BJ. He's just him and Title Now, they've always just been super helpful. So, and one thing is, as agents, we need to be able to refer quality businesses, quality people to our customers, because, as much as maybe it shouldn't, our referrals are a reflection on us, right? And if we didn't believe in BJ, we definitely wouldn't have him here speaking with, with our agents here at MX Realty. So, you know, I do encourage everybody, reach out to BJ, you know, start building that relationship, see where you guys can work together. I think, you know, you'll see, you know, they put their money where their mouth is. So, anybody have any final thoughts? BJ, anything final to say before we jump off here?
No. If nobody has any questions, then I look forward to connecting with all of you on a one-on-one basis, and obviously helping you close more deals.